12. Excuse me. Yes, 1 Samuel chapter 12. Now, you remember Samuel was kind of a sad farewell because you remember what the people had done that sort of displeased the Lord? What did they do that made Samuel kind of upset toward the end? Yeah. You know, they wanted a king. And you recall what was God's statement to Samuel? Do you remember about that? He said they haven't rejected me, but what? Yeah, they've rejected you because they weren't happy with me. I wasn't enough for them, right? And so Samuel's farewell is a little bit sad. Notice it says 1 Samuel chapter 12, starting verse 1. Samuel said to all Israel, I have listened to everything you said to me and have set a king over you. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of the Lord and the anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? It's interesting that he would say it that way because what did he know the king was going to do? He was going to take all of that, right? Going to take your possessions. And there was a charge, I think, against Samuel's sons that they were not unethical, and that's why we wanted a king. And so he says, but look at me. Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Who have I opposed? From whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes? If I have done any of these, I will make it right. And the people answered, you have not cheated or oppressed us. They replied, you have not taken anything from anyone's hand. You know, you think about when people get to the end of their life, sometimes they sort of want to justify the fact that I have lived right. I have tried to live faithfully. Remember what Paul said? What was his statement toward the end? He said, yes, done all in good conscience. So even when he was taking Christians out of their home, you know, he did not know what he was doing, and yet he knew what he was doing, but he didn't know the truth, and yet he did it with a good conscience. He sort of justified that, not that it was right, but that he tried to live. You remember what he also said? Yes, I've run the race, right? That is in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 6. He said, I'm ready to be poured out like a drink offering, right? I mean, I'm ready. I am no longer concerned about this life. And he said, there's a what laid up for me, remember? Crown of righteousness, right? There's a crown of righteousness laid up for me. I'm ready to go. Okay, so let's keep reading in verse 1 Samuel chapter 12, starting in verse 5. Samuel said to them, the Lord is witnessed against you, and also his anointed is witness this day that you have not found anything in my hand. He is witness, they said. Then Samuel said to the people, it is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your forefathers up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you with evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your fathers. So there's a little bit there's accusation there, isn't there? It's not just, not a real happy moment. In fact, he's sort of accusing them. Look at all of what the Lord has done. You remember I told you about the preacher's father-in-law toward the end of his life. That was the tone, I think, in that room, was that you are not living right, and you need to come back to the Lord. But if he's got 20 years ahead of him, he's afraid to say that. Because he may think, our relationship could suffer. They may not like me. Our Thanksgiving and Christmases would be so much more tense, right, because I spoke this way. But if you're on your deathbed, you don't have any of those. And so you're a lot freer to say what you think. So let's keep reading. This is in verse 8. After Jacob entered Egypt, they cried to the Lord for help. And the Lord sent Moses and Aaron who brought your forefathers out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Lord their God, so he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, who fought against them. They cried out to the Lord and said, "We have sinned, we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and the Asherahs. But now deliver us from the hands of our enemies, and we will serve you." Then the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel, and he delivered you from the hands of your enemies on every side, so that you had lived securely. But when you saw Nahshon, king of Amorites, was moving against you, you said to me, "No, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. Now here's the king you have chosen, the one you asked for. See, the Lord has set a king over you. If you fear the Lord and serve and obey him and do not rebel against his commands, and if you, both you and the king who reigns over you, follow the Lord your God, good. But if you do not obey the Lord, and if you rebel against his commands, his hand will be against you, as it was against your fathers. Now then, stand still and see this great thing the Lord is about to do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest now? I will call upon the Lord to send thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did in the eyes of your Lord when you asked for a king." Why would that be a problem? Thunder and rain. Isn't that usually a good thing? Yeah, not in harvest, right? So you got this great crop, and I'm going to send rain, and it's not going to be worth anything to you because you can't harvest it. So he's not happy. And, that's a lot of times we do have struggles with people, and toward the end of their life, our life, we sort of have to confront, say what needs to be said. Let's look at Genesis 48. This is another. This is Jacob saying goodbye. And this is a long one. We may actually take 2 classes for it. I'm not sure. 48 and 49, both chapters are kind of deal with Jacob's farewell. Look at verse 1. Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, along with him. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up on his bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and said to me, I am going to make you fruitful and will increase your numbers. I will make you a community of peoples, and I will give you this land as an everlasting possession for your descendants after you. Now then, your 2 sons born to you in Egypt before I came to you here will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Any children born to you after them will be yours in the territory they inherit. They will be reckoned under the names of their brothers. As I was returning to Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan while we were still on the way, a little distance from Ephraim. So I buried her there beside the road of Erethath. When Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he asked, "Who are these?" It's interesting to me when I read that, because it's almost like he starts the story, and then he kind of gets distracted a little bit. And he says, the little kids, It's almost like he's an old man, and he's got distracted. When Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he said, "Who are these?" They are the sons God has given me here, Joseph said to his father. Then Israel said, "Bring them to me so that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were failing because of old age, and he could hardly see them. So Joseph brought his sons close to him, and his father kissed them and embraced him. Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children too." Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. As Joseph took both of them, Ephraim on his right toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left toward Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head. Though he was the younger, and crossing his arms, he put his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. and may they increase greatly upon the earth. When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased, so he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to him, "No, my father, this is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." He blessed them that day and said, "In your name will Israel pronounce this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and take you back to the land of your fathers. And to you, as one who is over your brothers, I give the ridge of this land I took from Amorites by the sword and my bow." So Jacob then, in chapter 49, blesses his own sons. And he goes down the line talking about who's going to be rich and who is not. And then he passes away. So there's a theme, there's a common theme through all of these. The first one is they draw their family. And that, to me, if I knew I was going to die soon, and if God gave me that sort of blessing, and it is a blessing to know ahead of time, I think, then I would want to be around the people that mean the most to me, not by myself somewhere. And so they have their family come in, and they most all of them charge their relatives to be faithful to the Lord. And that is sort of a common theme throughout. A lot of times they'll survey their own life, and they'll talk about what they've accomplished. And then sometimes they make provision for the people as well. A common thing that I think that we know is that time is short. When we're living our life daily and we think we've got lots of time, we don't really make this kind of statement. And so I think part of the whole purpose of studying the parting words of the wise is to sort of have this mentality, even though we're not on our deathbed yet, and to be able to sort of make that connection with people and to say the things we need to say even before our time is up. Because I think often we go too many years without really talking to people. I got people in my family that, we can't hardly get along. And I would hate for the time to slip away and never say the things that I wanted to say to them. We often, I think, also have that approach to the Lord. We don't pray to the Lord like we should or even have time for Him until we realize just how close it is. Yes, sir?
Comment, these people that we're looking at this morning, they've told these things really. Not just like right at the tail end of their life. People were faithful prior to it. But there is some extra gravity that goes along with it. You have somebody died, says something. It might be the same thing they've said 50 times before, but the fact that they're now passing, you have a connection, might cause someone to stop and listen. So it's the pattern of their life they've been doing. And then you come to the end of their life, and what do they do? They're not freaking out. They're not scared to death about passing here to there. They're faithful to God. They're family of God, and they're giving one last effort to make sure people know what they need to know before that they've been preaching to them all along before they move forward. And I really appreciate that. The situations I've been in, but also reading these situations. But it's not like they just said, "Hey, live your life the way you want, and I'm just I'm grandpa or I'm great grandpa or I'm dad. You just live the way you like, and I'm okay with that until it's time to die." And all of a sudden, they throw a different kind of wrench in it all. That's not what has happened. These people are faithful, and that's the way we ought to be. We ought to be preaching and teaching that people love all the time. And if it comes time that we have this opportunity, we should be the first to do like they did and re-emphasize all the things we've been trying all along.
Exactly. Yes.
dying. So they have things. So when they're dying, because and for them to choose that.
Absolutely. Now, you're not talking about stock market or sports or things that are irrelevant, right? We're talking about the things you really want them to hear. And a lot of times that is, I love you very much. You know, Brother Jim, she said her stepfather, that was Jim Ward, when it came time for him to die, he called the elders together and spoke to us directly. And man, that was something, you know. He was very grave in his heart. He knew time was short, and he spoke very directly about some things. And I'll never forget that. It was wonderful. Wonderful to be able to say goodbye to somebody. Anybody else? What else? I did a repair for a lady years ago, and she called me at 10 o'clock at night to come out and work on a refrigerator. This was the first year I was in business, and so I needed it, you know, and I went out at 10 o'clock at night, and she was a lady from Louisiana, and she had the neatest southern drawl, you know, just a sweet little old lady, and she had this enormous house, just a beautiful home, and I said, what do you do? You know, I was kind of curious, man, how did you get this big old house? It's beautiful. And I wasn't being greedy. I wanted to know her story, you know. And she said, my husband used to be the editor for the Avalanche Journal. And she said he'd been an editor of a real small newspaper down in Louisiana. And he got a chance to come up here. And so this was a huge move for us. And he became this editor. And it was, you know, back in the day, it was a prominent position. I don't know that newspapers so much have that much relevance, but during that time, it was a big deal to be the editor of the AJ. They went to all the social events. They knew all the socialite people in town. And she said, well, one day she said, we love to go to the symphony. And she said, we went to the symphony and we were coming home. And she said, he said, you know, I want to go back to Europe. And he said, I know exactly where I want to go. And so they were sort of planning this out on the way home. She said, we had guests that were coming over after the symphony, and we were going to have this nice get together. And she said, we got home and he took 2 steps into the living room, just died right there. And none of that was relevant. And, you know, it was so sobering to have such a seer in this beautiful home, you know, and yet her life had changed on a dime. And so I think the parting words of the wise hopefully will help us maybe incorporate that into our life before it's too late. We have time to speak now, and I think that was why the deacons thought this would be a good thing to study, and I agree with them. It's great. And so I hope you enjoy it, and hope we've got a great line out. I think Eddie's he actually has some of the really good ones. I got stuck with some of the ones that were harder, but that's okay. Thank you.